Okay, looks like this video kicked off, so I'm going to go with it, and I'm not going to verify that it's actually working. It says it's clicking away seconds, so I'm going to assume it's working. And the event that's going to transpire this morning. Well, look at this. It's actually afternoon, about 12:30 on November 21st, 2024. And the purpose today is almost as usual, world history for ordinary people. And I'm going to do that via a book talk. The book I'm going to be talking about is With the Old Breed. This is a World War II Pacific story by a young Marine who participated in two major battles in the Western Pacific. It's also been referred to as the Central Pacific area. But we'll get into that. I'll just show you the book. There's the book. With the Old Breed. And that title, I believe, has become a little popular because some folks picked up on it and they did documentaries and television type stuff. But the author is a person by the name of Eugene B. Sledge. And he joined the Marines. He was actually born and raised in Alabama. I think he lived in Mobile. He was a young man at the time. He had got himself into college early 1940s. But he was adamant he was going to go enlist when World War II started. Very patriotic people back then. And he was one of them. And I don't know when he got the idea to write his experience about his experiences. And that's what he did. And people like with such names as Tom Hanks, Steven Spielberg, and others, they got kind of behind this, and they did a documentary called Pacific, which is about World War II out there, and they used some of the material from this book in that. Now, I got to admit that when I came across this book, I looked at it and I said, you know what, I'm never going to read this. This guy's no historian. He's not a scholar. He's just a guy who fought in a war, and he wrote a bunch of stuff on it. And I usually don't read those kind of books. So who knows how many years later, but not that many, maybe 2 years later, I finished another book and I picked this one up again, and I looked at it briefly, and then I decided I would try to dig in. Particularly, there's so much of that documentary Pacific that you see on the TV all the time, and it's probably, inserted into many documentaries when they're talking about World War II in the Central and Western, Southern Pacific. So, more than likely I had seen bits and pieces anyway. But I flipped through it, I saw some of the pictures in it, and I said, you know what, let me give it a try, see what happens. And lo and behold, it's a fairly unique book in that it's not about the generals and the admirals and all those guys. They were back in Pearl Harbor for the most part. If Tarawa is a case in point, screwing things up, Tarawa, this fella, he didn't participate in that. But some of the people he ran into out there did. And the word on Tarawa was that there was a big screw up there by big shots back in headquarters in Pearl Harbor. Big screw up. They got the tides wrong for the landing on Tarawa Atoll. So many Marines and other folks got hung up on the coral reefs because the water wasn't high enough. And they lost a lot of people that way. And these were the uppity-ups, the higher-ups that screwed up. But like I said, he doesn't investigate any of that. He takes, I get the opinion, this guy, I told you his name already, didn't I? This guy, Eugene B. Sledge, he really didn't have a lot of good things to say about the officer ranks in the war. He really didn't, and he just put them out of his mind, and he concentrated on what the enlisted ranks were doing, how they fared, and they didn't fare good at all. So the two battles that he peers into, one is Pelileo or something, Pelili something, Pelileo. It's a westernmost Caroline Island type place. And I could point it out to you on this map. At least I think I can. Let's see. Come on, map, cooperate. Well, to try to get you oriented here a little bit, where this island is. Now, is Australia. You're going to see it's hard doing these things with the maps. I'm going to persevere till we get somewhere. So, you're the Caroline Islands. Oh, way. Caroline Islands. And this island, I'll spell it right off of here. Peleliu. Peleliu. Now, that was an island at the western end of the Carolina Islands. Unlike Tarawa, which was a rather smallish atoll, and that was over here in the Gilberts. Quite a vast amount of Pacific Ocean away from the island I just noted, which is the first battle in the war that this guy participated in. By this guy, I mean this fella Sledge, Eugene Sledge. Now, he basically finished his training, and before you know it, he was on a troop transport going over. He and many other Marines, that's what he enlisted for. He wanted to be in the Marines, and he got himself appropriately placed in one of the more famous Marine Corps regiments. So he got what he wanted, and that's where the title of the book, With the Old Breed, comes from. So, supposedly, during World War I, they referred to the soldiers and such as the old breed. So he gets the baptism by fire, as they say, about what warfare is all about. And he'll say it over and over in this book that nothing honorable about this stuff. This is ghastly, atrocious behavior by the world's nations and their leaders. He comes to see it right away. It's totally obnoxious, atrocious behavior. But he reconciles himself to saying, but I'm doing it for my country, so I got to do it. You know, that's his take on it. What they're telling us to do is the worst possible thing imaginable, but we got to do it. As a matter of fact, there's a really nice quote at the end of the book that sums all this up. And what he does different than any other war book that I've read, what he does differently is that he's just giving you an accounting of the lives of the Marines and Navy corpsmen, because they're there to take care of the casualties that take place in war. So that's who he's talking about. He's not talking about general this and this and that. There's one or two officers that he was particularly proud to be working with. And those names he does mention, and he does talk to the reader about what these men did and how so unlike the average officer in these military, I want to call them brigades, whatever they are, these military brigades that are divided between enlisted and officer. And the division is deep, and the parting of the two is wide. Towards the end of the the book, the second place he goes fights, he's hardly back a few weeks from Palau, whatever it is. He has to go over to Okinawa and fight there. And it's hardly over. And the enlisted men find a place to get out of the sun and relax and rest. They hadn't, for 82 days, they had fought without a break. So they found and Okinawa had some really nice spots in it, forested, so with shade and what have you. So the enlisted men from his company went underneath and got in the shade, and we try to enjoy themselves, have a little coffee, and things that they had done without for these 82 days. Lo and behold, a bunch of officers were sitting not too far away, and they ordered the enlisted men to get out of the shade. They had to go sit in the sun. Now, if that doesn't want to make you throw up, I don't know what does. But certainly one of the reasons I got out of the Navy was I didn't do well around that sort of situation where one type of person is considered better than another type of person and given special privileges. I never did well with that. It's probably a defect in my character. But defect or not, I didn't stay in the Navy, and I had some nice offers, which I turned down. But, the long and the short of it is that the services, the military services, they didn't lose anything because I didn't re-up and get these, what were considered good deals. And the military didn't lose. I probably lost, but so what? Who cares? The point is, I never took to authority all that great. Never. And fortunately for me, in my working career, those who suspected themselves of being in authority, particularly authority over me, they know a lot less than I did, technically, and therefore they couldn't come at me because they would lose, when the project didn't go right. So I got a little lucky in that way, that because otherwise I would have got slaughtered in the civilian job market, because there most people bow their heads and do what they're told. But not me. Not me. Anyway, that's getting off the topic. The topic is definitely this book with the old breed. And this guy is not a fantastic writer at all. He may have took some college courses. He did go to college and he did graduate after. He did about a couple of years before, and then finished up in a college in Alabama. So he wasn't, he wasn't one of these folks who tries to write and doesn't know anything. Couldn't tell you the names of 3 officers or other people involved in either the Civil War or the War of Independence. That so many so-called people who have gone through our educational system don't know, But he was okay, but he was no scholar, And usually I tend to want to read the scholarly types. Don't ask me why. I must be out of my mind, but that's what I tend to read, the scholarly types. Anyway, he's no scholar, but he tells the story. I mean, the descriptions that he lets you come away with. You'll never be in love with a war battle again. Never. And this is one point I wanted to bring up. There's a lot of points I'd love to bring up, but he says that the veterans, when people would be gathered around to talk and about the war and so on, the veterans I'm talking about, they may be at a Veteran Day celebration. They may be brought in front of a crowd to do some talks, what have you. But when I was involved with having to do some talking in front of veterans, the soldiers who participated in World War II and some of the other wars, the Korean, Vietnam, I could never get where I felt that we had made a bond. They all seemed remote. They had this impenetrable fog about them. I didn't know what there was. Of course, I blame myself because, I could be an arrogant, I could be hard to get along with myself. Arrogant, think I know everything. And I I chalked it up to that. That's why we didn't make a bond, because I was coming off as an arrogant person. And actually, I didn't think I was. I always reached out to these guys and assured them that they were much, much respected and concerned for, and why they would not see that, because I thought I was bubbling over with enthusiasm for our veterans. And I still am, because, now I know it. I mean, every day of their lives out there, their life is on the line. They're going to get killed. That's what's going on with that. So I always admired them, and I didn't have a bad feeling or two about the veterans. So why, like I said, there seemed to be this gulf between us. I never understood until I read this book. And he spells it out in black and white. Everybody's talking about the war, okay? And most of these people talking about the war, were never there. They know nothing about warfare, nothing. But they talk about it. So they're imagining something in their head. It's probably from the TV or movies, and these were designed to make you feel comfortable. So whatever they were thinking about, it was making them feel comfortable. But the true veterans, the ones who went through the Pacific, and in Europe, the same thing, it's the horror. It's one of the better words you can use to explain what these guys saw. Horror, horror, horror. So when the groups at these veteran gatherings would be talking, the veterans looked like and appeared to be in a fog, to be way off in a distance, because when they closed their eyes and were thinking about what was being discussed, they didn't see the movie version or the TV version or even a book version. They saw the reality. That's what they saw. And that took them so far away. And they didn't want to get back into that vision. So they made themselves remote, trying to fend off the demons of war. The demons of war remembered. So I got myself another explanation. Of course, some people tell me, Joe, your explanations are just your explanations. There's nothing that says they're valid. Well, I beg to differ. I think they're very valid. And what this guy talks about is very valid. Now, that island that he was talking about, and the warfare in Okinawa, they certainly hold up well with the experience of the soldiers in the wet tropical Pacific, West Pacific, South Pacific, these places, when they talked about Guadalcanal, or when they talked about Burma, and when they talked about the Philippines. Similar experiences with the horror. The horror these guys had to go through. And I'm not going to tell you all the points of horror. If you want to know what soldiers go through, the Marines, the corpsmen, read this book. It won't take you long. I draw everything out, and make it last over a while. I already got another one stacked up, another story from a veteran, and this one I think is going to have to do with Iraq stuff, and I've already made up my mind that it's going to stink, and I'm not going to like it, but we don't know yet. But my mind is made up. Poor guy writes a book, and without even looking at it, I've already, it's garbage. But we'll see, and maybe someday I'll be back here talking about this book. I'm not going to tell you the title, but I don't even like the title that much. It's just not that much thought was given to it, so I don't like that. But when I think about how much of the war effort, and you have to give full credit for the victory in World War II in the Pacific to the enlisted man. They couldn't have been done without them. That's all there is to it. Guys sitting back in their command posts, looking at maps and stuff, weren't even needed. You had plenty of gunnery sergeants and other veterans from previous campaigns. They keep talking back to Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. That is a very major offense with staggering statistics when it comes to death and injury. Staggering. Guadalcanal. I'll show you how stupid I am. For years, I always knew Guadalcanal, and I figured there must have been some canal in that island, and yet that never made any sense because A, why would you need a canal in an island? You know, there's water here, water there, there's water everywhere. What do you need a canal for? But a couple of years back, I finally got the word. Guadalcanal is a name place of a town in Spain. And of course, as you know, Spain was pretty much first on the scene over there in the South Pacific. They may not have been first, but they were pretty much first. The other countries that can take some first place prizes for mucking up that part of the world. Portugal, I said Spain, the Dutch, the English. But the Spaniards were doing their thing in the 1500s. Some of these other countries, South Pacific lands that were taken over were done by the other European countries, and more like in the early 1600s. So, with the old breeds, documentaries, I'm sure, galore on the telly, and it's the stories that he tells are just atrocious behavior. And the ones who were the worst with the behavior were the Japanese. There's no doubt about that. Now, of course, on the other side of the world, it was the Germans, okay, who were just as horrid as the Japanese. Just as horrid. And if you think that when Japan surrendered, that their spots were changed, no. They're still the same things they were in the 12th century, 13th century, 14th, 15th. They're still the same, I chop your head off types. They just go about their business a little more in secret because they know that their egotism got to them. World War II. So I'm not going to talk on and on about this book. I just think maybe I'll just read briefly his last words. Just briefly. Because it's definitely says that under no conditions is warfare ever noble. It definitely speaks to that, although he does make a compromise in his statement. Here he goes. War is brutish, inglorious, and a terrible waste. Combat leaves an indelible mark on those who are forced to endure it. Indelible mark. As I said, they close their eyes. They're talking with a bunch of non-combatant, celebrating Veterans Day, okay, and they're unreachable, because that's what they see when the subject of war is brought up. They see the maggots eating the flesh of the dead soldier, and the stink that brings up. That's why you can't really access these veterans, because they don't want to think about war. And you see that all the time. They read that and hear that. Oh, Johnny, don't talk about the war. You can't get Johnny to talk about the war, and that's why he don't want to think about it. He don't want to think about seeing people's with the top of their head blown off. They don't want to see that. So don't talk to me about war, is what Johnny says. So anyway, getting back to this guy. Indelible mark. The only redeeming factors were my comrades. That's what was good. His comrades. Incredible bravery and devotion to each other. Marine Corps training taught us to kill efficiently and to try to survive. But it also taught us loyalty to each other and love. The esprit de corps sustained us until the millennium, and I don't know what he's talking about there, arrives, and countries cease trying to enslave others. It will be necessary to accept one's responsibility, to be willing to make sacrifices for one's country, as my comrades did. As the troops used to say, if the country is good enough to live in, it's good enough to fight for. With privilege goes responsibility. So, that tells you exactly where this guy is coming from. He didn't know what war was. He joined up as a young man. He may not even have been 20 yet. And then, quickly, a few days into that first battle, Paleo, whatever, he knew what war was. And he was never, during the entire 82 days he had served in battle, and that may be just Okinawa. You'd have to add the other one in. Probably that's more correct. He was never a big fan of war. Never, ever, ever, ever. He thought that the whole idea of civilization, of Christianity, and the other religions, the Moorish, the Christians, Jewish, they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. These people that get up and say that this and that faith is a faith of love, I don't know what planet they're living on, but they're not living in real planet Earth. That's not ever the case, And you hate to say it, but it doesn't look like it's getting any better. People are ready and willing to go at each other's throats to solve so-called problems. And all the problems are that one country is perceived as having more money, more profit than another country. And we can't let that happen. We got to go in there and stop it. Stop having all the money, you rats. Or we're going to go to war. And so the rats go to war. All right, that's enough. And I'm going to turn this off because I know you just love listening to me talk.